The stars in the Kepler 442 system burned with an unnatural red glow. Captain Jiwan stood on the bridge of her ship, the Meridian, watching the horrible sight through the main view screen. 3 planets that once held billions of lives now looked like dying embers in space. The Hunter fleet had been here just days ago, and they had left nothing but destruction behind. Jiwan was a human officer with 20 years of deep space experience. She had seen many terrible things in her career, but the work of the Hunters always made her stomach turn. These ancient aliens were not just killers. They were something much worse. They broke the spirits of entire civilizations before they destroyed them. The bridge crew worked quietly around her. Lieutenant Commander Yunwoo, their alien life expert, studied his readings with growing concern. His dark eyes reflected the red light from the dead planets outside. Engineering Officer Minho checked the ship systems while Communications Officer Yunji listened for any signs of life in the empty system. "Captain," Yunwoo said softly, "I am picking up something strange from the 4th moon of the outer planet. It looks like life signs, but they are very weak." Jiwan turned to face him. "What kind of life signs?" "Multiple species, Captain. At least 12 different types that I can identify. Most of them appear to be juveniles." The word juveniles hit Jiwan like a physical blow. She knew what that meant. The Hunters had a terrible habit that made them different from ordinary predators. When they attacked a world, they would separate the young from the adults. The parents would flee in terror while their children were left behind to die slowly. It was psychological warfare at its worst. "Set course for that moon," Jiwan ordered. "Maximum speed." "Captain," said Pilot Taeyeon from his station, "if the Hunters are still in this system, then we deal with that when it happens," Jiwan replied firmly. "I will not leave children to die alone, no matter what species they are." The Meridian moved through space toward the barren moon. As they got closer, the life signs became stronger and more clear. Hyunwoo worked at his station, his face growing more troubled with each reading. "Captain, there are thousands of them. Down there, young ones from species all across this sector. Altarian cubs, Xanthari hatchlings, vegan saplings, Quillen larvae, and others I cannot even identify. They have been there for at least a week with no food or proper shelter." Jiwan felt anger building in her chest. The Hunters were monsters, but what made it worse was that every other species in the galaxy accepted this as normal. When the Hunters came, you saved yourself and left the young behind. It was the price of survival, they said. It was the way. Things had to be, but humans had never been good at accepting the way things had to be. "Prepare the landing shuttles," Jiwan commanded. "Load them with medical supplies, food, and emergency shelters. We are going down there." "Captain," Communications Officer Yunji said with worry in her voice, "should I contact the other rescue ships in this sector? The Altarian fleet is only 2 light years away." Jiwan shook her head. "They will not come. They follow the same pattern as everyone else. When the Hunters attack, the adults run and leave their young behind. They think it is the only way to survive." The Meridian entered orbit around the small moon. Through the view screen, they could see a flat, rocky landscape with small groups of structures scattered across the surface. These were not buildings exactly, but simple shelters that offered basic protection from the cold and wind. "Life support readings show the atmosphere is breathable for most species down there," Hyunwoo reported. "But the temperature is very low, and there is no natural food source on this moon. The Hunters chose this place specifically. It will keep the juveniles alive long enough to suffer, but not long enough to be rescued." Jiwan closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about her own childhood on Earth. She remembered her parents, her school, the safety and love that surrounded her growing years. Every child deserved that feeling of protection regardless of what species they belonged to. "Launch the shuttles," she ordered. 3 small craft left the Meridian and descended toward the moon surface. Jiwan rode in the lead shuttle with Dr. Subin, their medical officer, and a team of volunteers. As they approached the first group of shelters, she could see small figures moving in the shadows. The shuttle landed with a soft thud on the rocky ground. Jiwon was the first one out, followed by her team carrying supplies and medical equipment. The air was thin and cold, but breathable. In the distance, she could see dozens of small aliens watching them with scared, hungry eyes. The first group they approached was a cluster of Altarian cubs. These beings looked like small, furry humanoids with large eyes and delicate features. In normal circumstances, Altarian cubs were known for being playful and curious. These ones huddled together for warmth, their fur dirty and matted, their eyes empty of hope. "It is okay," Jiwon said softly, kneeling down to their level. "We are here to help. We are not going to hurt you." The cubs did not respond at first. They had been abandoned by their own kind and had no reason to trust anyone. But Dr. Suben slowly approached with food and warm blankets, speaking in gentle tones. Gradually, the smallest cub reached out with a shaking hand to accept a piece of nutritional bar dot. As the rescue team spread out across the moon, they found the same scene repeated everywhere. Groups of young aliens from different species, all abandoned, all starving, all without hope. Some were so weak they could barely move. Others had tried to take care of the smaller ones and were exhausted from the effort, but there was something else that Jiwon noticed. Despite being from completely different species, many of the juveniles had formed mixed groups for protection and comfort. An Altarian cub might be sharing warmth with a Zenthari hatchling, while a vegan sapling used its natural abilities to find water for Aquilin larvae. "They are taking care of each other?" Dr. Subin observed with wonder in her voice. "Even though they are from different worlds, different species, they have formed family groups." Jiwon felt her heart breaking and swelling with pride at the same time. These children showed more compassion and courage than their adult relatives, who had fled in fear. "Get them all aboard the shuttles," Jiwon commanded. "Every single one. We will make room somehow." "Captain," one of her officers said quietly, "there are over 3,000 juveniles down here. Our ship is not designed to carry that many passengers." "Then we will redesign it," Jiwon replied firmly. "We will convert cargo bays, crew quarters. Whatever it takes, no child gets left behind." As the rescue operation continued, Jiwon activated her communication system and sent a message across human space. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. "This is Captain Jiwon of the Meridian. We have discovered something that demands immediate action from all humanity. The hunters are not just destroying worlds. They are collecting the young from every species they encounter and leaving them to die in concentration camps. While every other species in the galaxy accepts this as the price of survival, I believe we can do better." She paused, looking at a small Altarian cub who was finally eating after days of starvation. "I am requesting all available ships for Operation Shepherd. We are going to find every one of these camps and rescue every child we can find. I know the risks. I know the dangers. But I also know that humanity has never been good at walking away from those who need help." The message was sent across the human communication network, reaching military bases, civilian colonies, and trading ships throughout human space. Jiwon did not know what response she would get, but she knew she had to try. As the shuttles carried load after load of rescued juveniles back to the Meridian, the ship filled with the sounds of different languages and different needs. The crew worked around the clock to accommodate their unexpected passengers. Converting every available space into temporary living quarters, the rescued juveniles were scared and traumatized, but slowly they began to respond to human kindness. They ate the food they were given, accepted medical treatment, and gradually started to trust their rescuers. Standing on the bridge as they prepared to leave the moon, Jiwon looked at the readings showing thousands of life signs now safe aboard. Her ship? It was just the beginning, she knew. There were hundreds of other camps scattered across the galaxy, each one filled with abandoned children waiting for someone to care enough to help them. The Meridian turned away from the dead system and headed toward the nearest human base. Behind them, the empty moon returned to its cold silence. But the sound of young voices speaking different languages now filled the corridors of a human ship, and the galaxy was about to learn that some species would never accept that the young must be sacrificed for the survival of the old. The message from Captain Jiwan reached Earth Defense Command at 0300 hours station time. Admiral Minji was in her quarters, trying to sleep after a long day of routine meetings and paperwork. The emergency alert woke her instantly, and what she heard in Jiwan's transmission made sleep impossible for the rest of the night. By dawn, every major human installation in the galaxy was buzzing with activity. The image of thousands of abandoned alien children had spread through human communication networks faster than any military order ever could. Unlike other species that needed weeks of debate and committee meetings, humans responded with the speed that came from pure emotional drive. Admiral Minji stood in the main command center of Luna Base, watching as reports flooded in from across human space. Every colony, every mining station, every trading post was offering help. She had expected some response, but the scale of it amazed her. "Admiral," her aide Commander Hyunsu reported, "we have volunteer ships arriving from 17 different sectors. Military vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, even personal yachts. Everyone wants to help with the rescue operation." "How many ships total?" Minji asked. "Over 400 so far, and more arriving every hour. The problem is not finding volunteers. The problem is organizing them all." Dr. Suho arrived at Luna Base 3 hours later on the fastest transport he could find. As head of the Interspecies Medical Corps, he understood better than most what they were facing. Caring for alien juveniles was not simple. Each species had different dietary needs, different atmospheric requirements, different medical concerns. "We need to act fast," Dr. Suho told the assembled command staff. "Based on Captain Jiwan's reports, many of these children have been without proper food for over a week. Some species can survive that, but others cannot. We are racing against time." His medical team worked around the clock in the Luna Base laboratories. They studied every piece of information available about alien physiology, creating universal nutrition supplements that could keep different species alive during long rescue operations. It was experimental work, but they had no choice except to try. "The Altarian cubs need high protein intake every 6 hours, Dr. Suho explained to his staff. "The Xanthari hatchlings require specific minerals that their home world provides. The vegan saplings need photosynthetic light at precise wavelengths. We are essentially trying to recreate the conditions of dozens of different worlds inside our ships." Meanwhile, on the mining colony of New Seoul, Engineer Daeon was solving a different problem. The volunteer ships arriving for rescue operations were not designed to carry large numbers of passengers, especially alien passengers with special needs. They needed to be modified quickly and efficiently. "Strip out the cargo bays and convert them to living spaces," Daeon ordered her teams. "Install independent life support systems for different atmospheric mixes. Each ship needs to handle at least 5 different species comfortably." The workers at New Seoul had volunteered for double shifts without being asked. Factory crews who normally built mining equipment were now producing specialized habitat modules. Technical specialists who designed asteroid processing plants were creating environmental control systems for alien children they had never seen. The speed of the human response puzzled alien governments throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Yeji found herself standing before the Galactic Council, trying to explain why her species was mobilizing its entire civilian fleet for children that were not even human. "Honored representatives," Ambassador Yeji addressed the council chamber, "humanity recognizes that these juveniles represent the future of their species. To abandon them is to abandon hope itself." The Altarian representative, a tall being with silver fur and ancient eyes, spoke with barely controlled anger. "Your species interferes with natural selection. The hunters have always taken the weak. The strong survive to continue the race. This is the way of the galaxy." "With respect," Ambassador Yeji replied, "humanity does not accept that strength means abandoning your own children. We believe that true strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves." The Xanthari delegate, whose species resembled large reptilian humanoids, hissed with frustration. "Your actions will bring hunter attention to human worlds. You risk your own people for aliens who mean nothing to you. This is not logical. Ambassador Yeji looked around the council chamber at representatives from dozens of species. All of them had lost children to the hunters. All of them had accepted it as the price of survival. Perhaps logic is not the only consideration, she said quietly. Perhaps there are some things worth risking everything for. Back in human space, the rescue fleet was taking shape. Captain Sunho had been chosen to lead the first major operation. His ship, the Soul, was now surrounded by converted cargo vessels, medical ships, and mobile command units. Each vessel had been modified to care for different types of alien juveniles. We have reports of hunter camps in the Proxima sector, Captain Sunho told his assembled ship commanders via communication link. Intelligence suggests over 50,000 juveniles from at least 20 species. The camps are lightly guarded because the hunters never expected anyone to attempt rescue operations. Commander Bora, who had volunteered her passenger liner for conversion to a mobile nursery, asked the question that worried everyone. What happens when the hunters realize what we are doing? They will not ignore this forever. Captain Sunho was quiet for a moment. Every human in the fleet knew the risks. The hunters had destroyed entire star systems. Their technology was far beyond anything humanity possessed. But the image of abandoned children made such considerations seem less important. We knew the risks when we volunteered, Captain Sunho finally answered. Every child we save is a victory against fear. Every camp we empty weakens their psychological warfare. We cannot defeat the hunters in direct combat, but we can refuse to let them win by making us cruel like them. The first rescue fleet departed from Luna Base with 47 ships and over 12,000 volunteers. Dr. Naong, who had joined the mission as chief medical officer, watched the stars change to streaks of light as they entered faster-than-light travel. I have been studying the reports from Captain Jiwan's rescue, Dr. Naong told Captain Sunho. The juveniles showed remarkable psychological resilience when placed in human care. They responded to kindness even from an alien species. It suggests that the need for protection and care transcends species boundaries. When they arrived at the first hunter camp, the scene was exactly what they had expected, and nothing they could have prepared for emotionally. The camp was built on an ice moon, orbiting a gas giant. Thousands of small shelters dotted the frozen landscape, each one containing frightened alien children who had given up hope of rescue. The rescue teams worked with tears freezing on their faces in the cold air. They found juveniles who had not eaten in days, others who were injured and sick, some who had died from exposure and starvation. But they also found examples of incredible courage and compassion. A group of Altarian cubs had been sharing their meager food with smaller Quillen larvae, even though the two species came from opposite sides of the galaxy. Xanthari hatchlings had used their natural body heat to keep vegan saplings from freezing, despite their species being historical enemies. They are teaching us something, Dr. Naong observed as she treated a young Altarian who had injured himself trying to find food for others. These children understand something their parents have forgotten. Survival is not just about staying alive. It is about staying worth being alive. The rescue operation took 18 hours. Every juvenile was loaded onto the human ships, given medical treatment, food, and warm places to sleep. As the fleet prepared to leave the ice moon, Captain Sunho received a priority message from Human Command. Captain, we are detecting hunter patrol ships moving toward your position. You have approximately 6 hours before they arrive. Captain Sunho looked at the readings showing thousands of rescued juveniles now safe aboard his ships. 6 hours was enough time to escape, but intelligence reports indicated 7 more camps in nearby systems. Each camp contained thousands more abandoned children. Set course for the next camp location, Captain Sunho ordered. Maximum speed. Sir, his navigation officer asked with concern, what about the hunter patrols? Captain Sunho thought about the small Altarian cub he had personally carried to safety, the way she had looked at him with gratitude in her large eyes. He thought about the Xanthari hatchling who had tried to comfort a crying vegan sapling despite speaking different languages. "We came here to save children," he said firmly. "We are not leaving until every camp in this sector is empty." Behind them, the ice moon returned to its frozen silence. But the hunter patrol ships arriving hours later found only empty shelters and the lingering warmth of human determination. The news of the successful rescue spread quickly through both human and alien communication networks. For the first time in galactic history, someone had not only refused to abandon the young, but had actively rescued them from the hunters themselves. The psychological impact rippled through alien civilizations like earthquake waves, shaking the foundations of accepted wisdom. Supreme Hunter Vorak Prime stood in the command chamber of his massive warship, studying reports that made no sense according to everything his species had learned about galactic civilization. For 3,000 years, the hunters had perfected their method of conquest. Separate the young from the old, watch civilizations crumble from within as guilt and despair consumed them. Then harvest the broken remains. The pattern had never failed. Every species in the galaxy followed the same predictable response when faced with hunter attacks. The adults would flee to safety while abandoning their juveniles, choosing survival over sacrifice. It was logical, efficient, and completely reliable, until... Now, Vorak Prime was an ancient being, even by hunter standards. His dark exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles, and his 4 eyes had witnessed the fall of hundreds of civilizations. But the reports coming from his field commander spoke of something entirely new in his long experience. "Explain this to me again," Vorak Prime demanded of Commander Thekmore, who had just returned from patrol duty in the outer sectors. "These humans actively seek out our juvenile collection sites?" "Yes, Supreme Hunter," Thekmore replied, his voice carrying confusion and unease. "They do not flee when they discover the camps. Instead, they bring more ships and rescue the abandoned young. We have lost 17 collection sites in the past month to human interference." Vorak Prime moved to the large display screen that showed tactical information from across their territory. Red markers indicated the locations of former juvenile camps that had been emptied by human rescue operations. There were too many to ignore. "What is their motivation?" Vorak Prime asked. "Do they use the juveniles as slaves? Do they harvest them for biological materials?" "No, Supreme Hunter. Our intelligence indicates they provide medical care, food, and shelter. They appear to be genuinely attempting to preserve the lives of alien juveniles." This answer troubled Vorak Prime more than any other explanation would have. Slavery made sense. Biological harvesting made sense. But genuine care for the young of other species violated everything the hunters understood about natural behavior. Meanwhile, Captain Jiwan had established a permanent base of operations in the Outer Rim territories. Her ship, the Meridian, had been joined by dozens of other human vessels, creating a mobile fleet dedicated entirely to rescue missions. The ship corridors now echoed with the sounds of multiple alien languages as rescued juveniles from over 30 different species lived and played together. Dr. Yunji, who had joined the rescue fleet as a child psychologist, made daily reports that amazed even her. The alien juveniles were not just surviving in human care, they were thriving in ways that surprised everyone. "The psychological recovery rates are extraordinary," Dr. Yunji explained to Captain Jiwan during their weekly briefing. "Juveniles who were catatonic with trauma are now participating in group activities. They are forming friendships across species lines and responding to human caretakers as if we were their own kind." Captain Jiwan watched through the observation window as a human crew member named Sergeant Dayon played a simple game with a group of mixed alien children. The Altarian cubs were laughing, the Xanthari hatchlings were chirping with joy, and the vegan saplings were swaying in rhythm with the others. "It makes no sense according to xenobiology textbooks," Dr. Yunji continued. "Different species should have incompatible social development patterns. But somehow, human parental instincts seem to translate across species barriers." The success of the rescue missions had attracted attention from across human space. Captain Kyung-jae had arrived with a converted colony ship that now served as a floating school for alien children. Commander Insuk brought medical specialists and teachers. who were developing new methods of cross-species education, but their success had also attracted attention from the hunters. Our AK Prime decided that direct observation was necessary. He ordered a squadron of hunter ships to intercept one of the human rescue fleets and observe their behavior under pressure. According to all established patterns, the humans would flee when faced with superior firepower, abandoning their rescued juveniles to save themselves. The test came when Captain Taeyeon's ship, the Damascus, was leading a rescue operation in the Kepler 186 system. They had just completed the evacuation of a camp containing over 8,000 alien juveniles when hunter patrol ships appeared on their sensors. 3 hunter vessels approaching fast, reported Lieutenant Hyun-woo from the sensor station. They will intercept us in 14 minutes. Captain Taeyeon looked at the tactical display showing his small fleet of rescue ships loaded with alien children. The fastest ships could escape if they abandoned the slower vessels, but that would mean leaving thousands of juveniles to be recaptured by the hunters. All ships, continue on course to the jump point, Captain Taeyeon ordered. Damascus will buy you the time you need. Sir, his first officer protested, the Damascus cannot fight 3 hunter ships alone. It would be suicide, maybe, Captain Taeyeon replied calmly. But those children did not choose to be in this situation. We did. We made the choice to rescue them, and that means we make the choice to protect them. The Damascus turned toward the approaching hunter ships while broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Captain Taeyeon of the Earth vessel Damascus. We are conducting humanitarian rescue operations. You are interfering with the protection of juveniles. Withdraw immediately. The Hunter Squadron Commander, War Leader Kethvash, was startled by the transmission. No species had ever made demands of hunter forces. They begged, they negotiated, they fled, but they never issued orders. Human vessel, Kethvash responded. Surrender the collected juveniles and you will be allowed to depart unharmed. Negative, Captain Taeyeon replied. These children are under human protection now. If you want them, you will have to go through us. The battle that followed became legendary in both human and hunter military records. The Damascus fought with a desperate creativity that confused and frustrated the hunter pilots. Captain Taeyeon used every trick of human military doctrine, employing unpredictable maneuvers that made no sense according to established tactical principles. When the Damascus lost weapons power, Captain Taeyeon redirected all remaining energy to the engines and rammed the lead hunter ship. When that ship was crippled, he used the Damascus's emergency systems to overload the reactor, creating an explosion that damaged a second hunter vessel. The Damascus was ultimately destroyed, but its sacrifice allowed 12,000 alien juveniles to escape to safety aboard the other rescue ships. Captain Taeyeon and his crew died knowing that their deaths had meaning beyond themselves. War leader Kethvash survived the battle but returned to the hunter fleet deeply troubled. In all his years of combat, he had never seen behavior like what the humans displayed. They had willingly died for beings that were not their offspring, not even their species. They fought as if the alien juveniles were their own young, Kethvash reported to Vorak Prime. I have never encountered such irrational behavior. They gain nothing from their sacrifice except the survival of creatures that share no genetic relationship with them. Vorak Prime studied the battle recordings for hours, trying to understand what he was seeing. The tactical decisions made by the human captain violated every principle of self-preservation that drove intelligent behavior. Yet there was undeniable logic in the sacrifice. It achieved its objective of protecting the rescued juveniles. Bring me more information about this species, Vorak Prime ordered his intelligence commanders. I need to understand what drives them to such actions. Are they acting from ignorance of our capabilities, or is there something else motivating their behavior? The intelligence reports that came back over the following days painted a picture of a species, unlike any the hunters had encountered. Humans had a documented history of individuals sacrificing themselves for strangers. They formed emotional attachments to beings they had never met. They showed parental protective behavior toward the young of completely different species. Most disturbing of all, the human rescue operations were not decreasing despite their losses. The destruction of the Damascus had not scared other humans away from rescue missions. Instead, it had inspired them to increase their efforts. They are naming new ships after the destroyed vessel, Intelligence Commander Valden reported. 3. New Damascus-class ships have entered service with rescue fleets. The crew who died are being honored as heroes throughout human space. Vorak Prime felt something he had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. The hunters had built their entire strategy around the predictable weakness of other species. But humans seem to grow stronger when faced with sacrifice, not weaker. What happens to the juveniles they rescue? Vorak Prime asked. They are integrated into human communities, Supreme Hunter. Given education, medical care, and what humans call adoption. Many are being raised as if they were human offspring. This information disturbed Vorak Prime most of all. The juveniles being rescued today would grow up with gratitude toward humanity and loyalty to human values. They would return to their own species carrying ideas about cross-species cooperation and the protection of the vulnerable. The news of Captain Taeyeon's sacrifice spread across the galaxy faster than any military intelligence report in recorded history. But this time, the news was not carried by official diplomatic channels or government communication networks. It was carried by the rescued alien juveniles themselves, who had witnessed human courage firsthand. On the Altarian homeworld of Velterra, a young cub named Jeth Cole stood before the Planetary Council and told them about the human commander named Bora, who had sung lullabies and broken Altarian to help frightened children sleep. Her voice shook as she described how the humans had shared their own food when supplies ran low, and how they had built special climbing structures because they noticed Altarian cubs needed to climb to feel safe. They treated us like their own offspring, Jeth Cole testified, her large eyes bright with emotion. When the hunter ships came, they did not abandon us. They fought to protect us, even though we were not their species, not their responsibility. The adult Altarians in the council chamber listened in uncomfortable silence. Many of them had lost cubs to hunter raids over the years. They had accepted these losses as the inevitable price of survival, the way things had to be in a dangerous galaxy. But now they were hearing testimony from survivors who could tell them exactly what happened after the adults fled to safety. For the first time in galactic history, an entire generation of young beings could bear witness that another species had cared for them. When their own parents could not, similar scenes were playing out across dozens of worlds. On the Xanthari homeworld, hatchlings told their parents about the human engineer Yamin, who had built them climbing structures because he observed their natural behavior and wanted them to be comfortable. The adult Xanthari, whose culture valued strength above all else, struggled to understand why humans would show such care for the young of other species. Dr. Naeang, leading a joint research team aboard the human medical ship Bisun, made a discovery that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about the hunters. Working with rescued juveniles from multiple species, she detected unusual energy patterns that had been overlooked in previous studies. The juvenile camps are not just psychological warfare, Dr. Naeang explained to the assembled research team. They are feeding stations. The hunters consume emotional energy as much as they consume physical matter. Fear, despair, hopelessness. These emotions generate a specific type of psychic energy that the hunters require for survival. Dr. Chae-young, a xenobiologist who had joined the research mission, studied the data with growing excitement. This explains their behavior patterns. They do not just kill civilizations, they farm them. The juvenile camps generate massive amounts of trauma-based psychic energy from both the abandoned children and the guilty parents who fled. The implications were staggering. Every successful rescue operation was not just saving individual lives. It was cutting off a vital food source for the hunters. Every empty camp weakened them significantly. Captain Woojin, who now commanded the largest rescue fleet in human space, received this information while conducting operations in the Beta Centauri sector. His fleet had grown to over 200 ships, including vessels donated by human colonies that had never been directly threatened by the hunters. If Dr. Naong is correct, Captain Woojin told his assembled ship commanders, then every child we save makes the hunters weaker. Every camp we empty reduces their ability to maintain their fleet and continue their attacks. The psychological impact of the rescued juveniles' testimony was devastating to established alien governments. The Altarian Prime Minister faced massive protests demanding to know why rescue operations had never been attempted. The Zenthari military split into factions, with younger officers arguing that their warrior culture should have been the first to rescue abandoned young. Ambassador Minho found himself addressing an emergency session of the Galactic Council, as representatives from dozens of species demanded answers. The chamber was filled with angry voices and accusatory stares as civilizations that had maintained careful neutrality for centuries suddenly questioned everything they thought they knew about survival. The humans have proven that rescue is possible, declared the vegan representative whose species had lost entire generations to hunter raids. They have shown that the choice between survival and sacrifice is a false choice. We can have both. Their actions have put the entire galaxy at risk, argued the Huilan delegate, whose insectoid species had perfected the art of hiding from hunter fleets. The hunters will retaliate against all of us for human interference. Ambassador Minho stood to address the chaotic chamber. Honored representatives, humanity did not set out to change galactic civilization. We simply could not accept that children should be abandoned to die alone, regardless of what species they belong to. Your sentiment is admirable, replied the ancient Koravan representative, whose crystalline form glowed with frustrated energy. But sentiment does not protect planets from hunter fleets. Your actions may have doomed us all. Perhaps, Ambassador Minho acknowledged. But consider this, for 3,000 years we have all followed the same strategy of abandonment and retreat. For 3,000 years the hunters have grown stronger while we have grown weaker. Maybe it is time to try something different. The debate raged for days, but while politicians argued, something else was happening throughout the galaxy. The rescued juveniles had returned to their home species carrying stories of human compassion and cross-species cooperation. They spoke to their siblings, their friends, their extended families. They shared memories of mixed-species playgroups, where natural enemies had become friends. On the Altarian world of New Valterra, a group of adult citizens organized their own rescue mission after hearing testimony from returned cubs. They converted a passenger liner into a rescue ship and departed for Hunter territory without government approval. The Zenthari youth movement, inspired by stories of human courage, began training as rescue specialists. Young Zenthari warriors argued that true strength meant protecting the helpless, not abandoning them. Even the traditionally isolationist vegan communities began contributing resources to rescue operations, their philosophy of life preservation aligning with human rescue efforts. The change was not limited to individual actions. The concept of cross-species adoption, previously unknown in galactic civilization, began spreading rapidly. Alien families started accepting rescued juveniles from other species as permanent family members. Dr. Yunho, studying the social changes from the Human Research Station at Proxima Base, documented the transformation with amazement. We are witnessing the birth of a completely new form of galactic civilization, he reported. The rigid species-based boundaries that have defined society for millennia are dissolving. Families now include multiple species. Communities are forming around shared values rather than shared genetics. The hunters, monitoring galactic communications from their deep space command ships, watched these developments with growing alarm. Supreme Hunter Vorik Prime reviewed intelligence reports that described a galaxy in rapid transformation. The psychological foundations of our conquest strategy are failing, reported Intelligence Commander Velvin. Species that once competed with each other are now cooperating. Communities that once prioritized genetic survival are now prioritizing ideological values. Vorak Prime studied orbital images of alien worlds. where mixed species communities were forming around human-influenced philosophies of protection and mutual aid. The careful balance of fear and division that had kept the galaxy weak for centuries was crumbling. The humans have introduced a virus into galactic civilization, Vorak Prime observed. Not a biological virus, but an ideological one. The concept that strength comes from protecting others instead of abandoning them is spreading faster than our fleets can contain. But the most disturbing reports came from hunters who had direct contact with the rescued juveniles. Several patrol commanders reported that captured human ships contained young aliens who defended their human caretakers with desperate courage. Some juvenile aliens had even attempted to protect human crew members during hunter boarding actions. They have formed genuine emotional bonds, war leader Kethvash reported. The rescued juveniles display the same protective instincts toward humans that they would toward their own species. This level of cross-species loyalty has never been documented before. Vorak Prime realized that the hunters were facing something far more dangerous than military opposition. They were facing the emergence of a galactic civilization based on completely different principles than the fear and division that had made hunter conquest possible. The abandoned juveniles that should have weakened galactic resolve had instead become the foundation for unprecedented unity. The humans had not just rescued alien children, they had planted the seeds of a revolution that threatened everything the hunters had built. For the first time in 3 millennia, Vorak Prime began to consider the possibility that the hunters might need to change their own strategy. The galaxy was awakening to new possibilities, and the old methods of conquest might no longer be sufficient to maintain hunter dominance. The hunter fleet that emerged from deep space was the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. 10,000 ships of war, each one capable of destroying entire planets, moved toward human space with Supreme Hunter Vorak Prime commanding from his massive flagship. His strategy was simple and direct: eliminate the species that had disrupted the perfect order of galactic civilization. The humans have introduced chaos into our carefully maintained system, Vorak Prime announced to his assembled war commanders. They have taught other species to value sentiment over survival. This infection must be removed before it spreads further. The hunter fleet moved through space like a dark tide, consuming everything in its path. Scout ships reported that human colonies were evacuating civilians but not abandoning their positions. Military bases were powering up weapons and calling for reinforcements. Once again, the humans were refusing to follow the expected pattern of retreat and surrender. Admiral Gaong stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the tactical display that showed the approaching hunter armada. Every military strategist in human space had run the calculations. Humanity could not win a direct confrontation with forces of this magnitude. The hunters possessed technology that was centuries ahead of human capabilities. Estimated time until they reached the outer defense perimeter? Admiral Gaon asked. Her tactical officer, 18 hours, Admiral. The evacuation fleets are requesting permission to begin full retreat to the secondary colonies. Admiral Gaon shook her head. Send the civilian evacuation ships to safety, but the defense fleet holds position. We knew this day would come when we started rescuing those children. We do not run when others need protection. But as hunter ships approached the Sol system, something unprecedented began to happen. Alien fleets started arriving to defend human space, not because of treaties or military alliances, but because their own children had demanded it. The first ships to arrive were Altarian dreadnoughts under the command of Captain Kethvar, a young officer who had been rescued as a cub from a hunter camp. His flagship, the Righteous Thunder, took position alongside human defense vessels as he broadcast on all frequencies. Admiral Gayao, this is Captain Kethvar of the Altarian Defense Force. Commander Bora saved my life when I was a frightened cub with no hope. Today I return the favor. More ships continued arriving throughout the day. Xanthari battle cruisers commanded by officers who had grown up in human care. Vegan bioships piloted by beings who remembered human kindness during their darkest hours. Quillan stealth fighters crewed by insects who had learned about courage from human example. Dr. Cheung, monitoring the battle preparations from the medical ship Seoul, made observations that amazed even her. The mixed crews are operating with coordination levels that should be impossible. Altarians and Zenthras working together, species that have been enemies for centuries cooperating perfectly. The rescued juveniles, now grown to adulthood, had not simply returned to their original species. They had formed something entirely new, a generation that thought of themselves as galactic citizens rather than members of single-species communities. Commander Dongwu, captain of the rebuilt Damascus II, looked around his bridge at a crew that included beings from 7 different species. His tactical officer was an Altarian who had been rescued as a cub. His navigator was a Zenthari who spoke perfect human language. His communications specialist was a vegan who had grown up in a human foster family. Captain, his Altarian tactical officer reported, Hunter Vanguard ships are entering weapons range. Estimate 4,000 enemy vessels in the first wave. The battle for Earth began with the largest military engagement in galactic history. But it was unlike any previous war. The defending fleet fought not as separate species working together, but as a unified force that transcended traditional boundaries, human tactical flexibility combined with Altarian firepower. Zenthari speed merged with vegan resilience. Quillan stealth technology supported by human electronic warfare. The psychological impact on the Hunter forces was immediate and devastating. They fight as a single organism, war leader Keth Vash reported to Vorak Prime as his squadron faced coordinated attacks from multiple species. There is no division between human and alien forces. They operate as if they share a single mind. Captain Dongwu led a mixed strike force into the heart of the Hunter fleet. His ship surrounded by vessels from a dozen different species, but these were not the separate, competing civilizations that the Hunters had fought for millennia. These were beings united by shared experience and common values. All ships execute Pattern Shepherd, Captain Dongwu commanded, using tactical formations developed specifically for mixed species operations. The strike force moved through Hunter defensive lines like a blade, each species contributing their unique strengths to the overall mission. But the battle took a dramatic turn when Supreme Hunter Vorak Prime himself entered the combat zone. His flagship, the Dark Eternal, was a vessel of such destructive power that it had never been defeated in 3,000 years of warfare. Focus all fire on the human command ships, Vorak Prime ordered. Remove their leadership and the alien alliance will collapse. Multiple Hunter squadrons converged on Admiral Gaeong's flagship. The New Hope, the massive human dreadnought, found itself surrounded by enemy vessels, its shields failing under concentrated fire. It seemed that the human command structure was about to be destroyed. Then something happened that shocked both sides of the battle. The rescued juveniles, now adult warriors, began positioning their ships between the Hunter forces and the endangered human vessel. Ships from dozens of species formed a protective barrier around the New Hope, taking damage that was meant for their human allies. We will not let them fall, Captain Kethvar announced as his Altarian dreadnought absorbed Hunter fire meant for the human flagship. These humans gave us life when our own people had given up on us. We give our lives gladly to protect them. Dr. Che-Yung, working in the medical bays that treated casualties from all species equally, made a crucial discovery while analyzing Hunter prisoners. The Hunters are not evil by choice, she reported to Admiral Gaeong during a brief lull in battle. They are trapped in a cycle of psychic addiction. Their need to consume fear and despair has made them incapable of forming normal emotional bonds. The revelation changed everything. These ancient predators were not monsters by nature, they were victims of their own psychological condition. They had become galactic parasites because they had forgotten how to be anything else. They have been feeding on negative emotions for so long that they cannot remember what positive emotions feel like, Dr. Che-Yung explained. Their entire civilization is built around maintaining their addiction to fear and pain. Admiral Gaeong made a decision that would be remembered throughout galactic history. As hunter forces closed in for what appeared to be the final assault, she opened communication channels to the entire battle zone. Supreme Hunter Vorak Prime, this is Admiral Gaang of the Earth Defense Force. I am offering you and your people a chance at rehabilitation. We have learned that your aggression comes from psychological illness, not inherent evil. We can help you break the cycle of addiction that has trapped your species for millennia. The offer stunned both human and hunter forces. In the middle of the largest battle in galactic history, a human admiral was offering medical assistance to her enemies, Vorak Prime, aboard his flagship surrounded by the largest military force. His species had ever assembled, found himself facing a choice no hunter had ever needed to make. Continue the cycle of violence and fear that had sustained his people for 3,000 years, or trust in the compassion of beings his species had tried to destroy. The hunter fleet held position, weapons charged but not firing as their supreme leader contemplated an offer of help from the very species he had come to eliminate. Around them, the combined galactic fleet waited in tense silence, ready to resume battle but hoping for something better. For the first time in recorded history, a galactic war had paused because one side offered healing instead of destruction. The decision Vorak Prime made in that moment would determine not just the outcome of the battle, but the future of civilization itself. The galaxy held its breath as an ancient predator considered the possibility that there might be another way to exist besides consuming the fear of others. In the medical bays of human ships, rescued alien juveniles who had grown up knowing both species could learn to care for each other across any boundary waited to see if their adopted human parents could work the same miracle with their former captors. Supreme Hunter Vorak Prime stood alone in his command chamber, surrounded by 10,000 ships waiting for his decision. For 3 millennia, his species had known only one way to exist, as predators feeding on the fear and despair of others. The idea of accepting help from their intended victims violated everything he understood about the natural order, but the humans had already violated everything he understood about the natural order. War Leader Kethvash, Vorak Prime spoke into his communication system, stand down all weapons. We will accept the human offer. The announcement rippled through the hunter fleet like a shockwave. Many commanders questioned the order, others demanded explanation, but centuries of absolute obedience to their supreme leader held the fleet together even in this moment of unprecedented change. Admiral Gaang received the transmission with a mixture of relief and apprehension. Offering to help the hunters had been the right thing to do, but she knew the practical challenges would be enormous. Dr. Chiyung, Admiral Gaang contacted the medical ship Seoul, prepare rehabilitation protocols for an entire species. We are about to attempt something that has never been done before. The process of hunter rehabilitation began slowly and carefully. Dr. Yoongi established the first treatment centers on remote space stations, working with volunteer hunter subjects who were desperate to break their addiction to negative emotions. The withdrawal symptoms are severe, Dr. Yoongi reported after the first week of treatment. Hunters who stop consuming fear and despair experience something similar to what humans would call severe depression. Their entire neurological system is adapted to processing these negative energies. But there were breakthroughs. The first came when a hunter patient named Velkorth, working with Dr. Subin, experienced genuine happiness for the first time in centuries. The emotion was triggered by watching rescued alien juveniles playing together in the station's recreational area. I had forgotten, Velkorth said, his voice filled with wonder. We used to feel joy like this before the addiction took hold, before we became dependent on consuming the pain of others. The rehabilitation process was not just medical, it was social and psychological. Reformed hunters began working alongside humans and aliens in the rescue operations, using their intimate knowledge of hunter camps to locate and save more abandoned juveniles. Captain Jiwan, now promoted to admiral in charge of the Galactic Juvenile Protection Agency, watched with amazement as former predators became protectors. Hunter ships that once collected frightened children now carried them to safety. Vorak Prime has assigned his entire Third Fleet to rescue operations, Admiral Jiwan reported to the Galactic Council. Former Hunter commanders work alongside human crews, and their knowledge of Hunter psychology has made our operations far more effective. The rescued alien juveniles who had grown up knowing that different species could learn to care for each other played a crucial role in helping reformed Hunters integrate into galactic society. Young beings who had once been Hunter victims now served as bridges between their former captors and their rescuers. Commander Subin, whose ship had become a mobile rehabilitation center, documented remarkable changes in both Hunters and their former victims. "The juveniles show no fear of reformed Hunters," she observed. "Instead, they demonstrate the same protective compassion toward recovering Hunter addicts that humans showed toward them." The transformation spread throughout the galaxy. The concept of found family, unknown before human intervention, became the foundation of a new form of civilization. Species barriers dissolved as beings formed emotional bonds based on shared experience rather than genetic similarity. The Altarians established honor, families that included members from multiple species. The Xanthari created nurture clans based on mutual care rather than blood relations. The vegans developed growth circles that welcomed any being in need of protection and guidance. Engineering Chief Hosiak, working on the newest class of ships for the Galactic Protection Agency, marveled at the collaborative design process. "These vessels incorporate technology from every known species," he explained to visiting dignitaries. "Hunter scanning systems combined with human tactical flexibility, Altarian power generation merged with Xanthari speed, vegan biological adaptation enhanced by Quillan stealth capabilities." But the greatest test of the new galactic order came when long-range sensors detected another threat approaching from beyond the galactic rim. A predator species similar to the original Hunters but larger and apparently more aggressive was moving toward inhabited space. The response was immediate and unified in a way that would have been impossible before human intervention. Every species in the galaxy mobilized not just their military fleets but their rescue ships as well. The message was clear. This new galaxy would not abandon its vulnerable members. Admiral Minji, commanding the Combined Defense Force, studied the tactical displays showing thousands of ships from hundreds of species moving in perfect coordination. "The approaching force is massive," she announced to the assembled fleet commanders, "but they face something that has never existed before, a truly unified galactic civilization." Reformed Hunter Supreme Leader Vorak Prime, now serving as an advisor to the Galactic Protection Council, transmitted a message to the approaching threat. His words carried the authority of someone who had once been exactly what they were. "Unknown vessels, you face not separate species fleeing in terror, but a unified galaxy that protects its young. We know what you are because we used to be what you are. Turn back now, learn from our example, or discover what happens when you threaten our children." The response came back filled with arrogance and contempt. "We are the Devourers. We have consumed 1,000 galaxies. Your unity means nothing against our hunger." But as the Devourer fleet entered the outer systems, they encountered something their previous victims had never possessed, a civilization that had learned to turn former enemies into allies. Hunter technology guided allied weapons. Rescued juveniles, now adults, coordinated defense strategies. Reformed predators fought alongside their former prey. The first engagement demonstrated the power of the new galactic unity. Devourer ships that expected to face scattered, competing species instead confronted coordinated resistance from beings who had learned that true strength came from protecting others. Captain Dongwu, commanding the Damascus III with his mixed species crew, led the vanguard force against the Devourer fleet. His tactical officer was a reformed hunter who understood predator psychology. His navigator was an Altarian who had been rescued as a cub. His communications specialist was a human who spoke 17 alien languages fluently. "All ships execute formation unity," Captain Dongwu commanded, using tactics developed specifically for the new multi-species military doctrine. The attack formation moved like a living organism, each component species contributing their unique abilities to the whole. The Devourers found themselves facing an enemy they could not understand. Species that should have been easy to divide and conquer instead fought with unprecedented coordination. Their psychological warfare, designed to spread fear and despair, instead encountered beings who had learned to find strength through mutual support. Dr. Neang, monitoring the battle from her medical vessel, made observations that would prove crucial to victory. The Devourers are showing signs of confusion and disorientation, she reported. Their entire strategy depends on creating fear and division. When faced with genuine unity, they do not know how to respond. The battle raged for days, but the outcome was never truly in doubt. The Devourers had superior numbers and advanced technology, but they faced an enemy that had transcended the limitations that made conquest possible. Every Devourer tactic designed to break galactic unity instead strengthened the bonds between species. When Devourer forces attempted to capture alien juveniles to use as psychological weapons, they found themselves facing not just the parents of those children, but entire communities of mixed species families. When they tried to exploit historical conflicts between species, they discovered that old enemies had become new allies through shared experience. The turning point came when a group of reformed hunters, led by Vorak Prime himself, approached the Devourer flagship under a flag of truce. The ancient predator who had once terrorized the galaxy now offered the same chance at redemption that humans had given him. "I know what drives you," Vorka Prime transmitted to the Devourer leadership. "The hunger for fear, the addiction to despair, the need to consume negative emotions. I lived with that addiction for 3,000 years. But there is another way to exist, another way to find meaning in the universe." The Devourer response was predictable: mockery, threats, promises of destruction. But some of their ships began to waver. The idea that their endless hunger might not be natural law, but rather a curable condition, planted seeds of doubt in minds that had never questioned their nature. The war ended not with a climactic battle, but with a gradual transformation. Devourer ships began defecting, their crews seeking the same rehabilitation that had freed the hunters from their psychological prison. Those who refused to change found themselves facing increasingly coordinated resistance until their fleet dissolved from within.